Am I doing clap now? Okay.
Hello, Travis Knight, and thank you for being with us in Annecy today.
Pleasure to be here.
Before directing films, you were an animator, right?
That's right.
Do you still think like one? What has never changed since your very first shot?
Yeah, long before I was a director, I was an animator. Long before I was an animator, I was an artist. I carry a sketchbook with me everywhere I went when I was a kid. I was constantly drawing, making my own comic strips. I taught myself how to animate when I was a kid, both first starting in 2D and then in stop motion, then later in CG as well. So yeah, I still very much do. I have an animator's brain. It's just kind of how I'm wired. You're always looking, an animator's kind of always looking at the world around them. They're observing detail, the way things move, the way things look. And that is kind of fundamentally how I look at the world. And so both in terms of how I approach animation and also live action, I use my animator's brain in terms of like looking at the world and figure out how to tell those stories. Absolutely.
You just mentioned sketchbook, little boy's sketchbook. What was drawn in there?
All kinds of horrible things. I mean, I was a huge, comic book fan. That's probably no surprise to anyone. I was a huge fan of fantasy. One of the many great gifts that my mother gave me was the love of reading. My mom was a voracious reader, and still is, and so like there were books around all over the house, and I was constantly reading probably things I shouldn't have read, but those would inspire kind of my own imagination. And I think one of the things that animators do is that they kind of pour those ideas, that imagination into some kind of a physical thing, and so that's what I would do with my sketchbooks. It was just I'd observe things or I'd imagine things, and I just filled up sketchbook after sketchbook. As a child, and it just some like little comic strips, little stories that I would tell, and then it was just kind of part of how I looked at and processed the world. I could, because I didn't know anyone who worked in film as a child, I couldn't have imagined that someday I would be doing this for a living. But it feels like when I look back at the choices I made and how I was, it feels sort of like almost like a natural evolution of kind of the kid with the sketchbook to the guy with the camera.
Actually, most directors arrive from writing or live action. You arrived one frame at a time. How has animation shaped the way you direct everything else?
There's something that's different about the process of making stop motion. It's unique to the how it's done. That's different from 2D animation or CG animation in that those forms of animation are iterative. You can go back and refine and rework. With stop motion, it's progressive. You move forward one frame at a time, and so there's no backseas. Basically, you kind of commit to a point of view, and so with that in mind, you have to have a certain degree of discipline as you go into making these things. You can't really mess around. You really have to know what you want to do. Now, there's always like little moments of kind of improvisation or little kind of serendipitous moments where something you couldn't have planned for happens and then you have to pivot. But stop motion it requires extraordinarily discipline as you move forward in these things. And I bring that same point of view to how I direct animation and how I direct live action actually. It's just a lot of these things I end up storyboarding exactly the way you would in animation. It's just that kind of that training, that discipline and that forethought that you have to have when you're making an animated movie, and specifically in stop motion.
Could we say that animation and precisely stop motion is the best school for any kind of direction?
I don't know that I would say it's the best school for anything. I mean, I've consistently said that I think stop motion is the absolute worst way to make a movie. I do believe that. It's incredibly slow and incredibly painful. It's frustrating as hell. It's painstaking, maddeningly so oftentimes. But I also think that just by virtue of the process itself, something comes out the other side that's just extraordinarily beautiful. And I think it's because the process of creating art kind of leaves a trace of that process on the art itself. And so embedded within every single frame of a stop motion movie is kind of the humanity, the soul of the people who poured themselves into it. And so I think one thing I think that a director would benefit from working in stop motion is that forethought, that discipline, because if you can combine both of those things, the kind of the organization, the thought, the vision, the discipline, and then be able to kind of play on the day, I think that's the greatest combination of approaches that one could take.
Talking about combinations, here in Annecy, we have a combination of all kind of expression of animation. Were you there some other editions, or is this your first time in Annecy?
No, this is my first time in Annecy. Yeah, it's odd because LAIKA has been here many times before. This does feel kind of like a spiritual home of animation in some ways, and it's kind of strange that I've never been here before. Usually it's just because I'm working, but it's been a thrill to be here. I will say it is beautiful, as I've always heard. The lake is stunning. The mountains are majestic. But dear God, is it hot this year? My God, it's unbearably hot.
It is indeed. Do you feel at home already in Annecy with the Cité, with your exhibits, and this place being the capital city of animation?
Yeah, I do feel at home. I mean, there is something, I feel kind of, anytime I meet a fellow animator or a fellow animation enthusiast, it does feel like a kindred spirit. There's something very precious about the act of creativity and craftsmanship, and how these things become vessels for wonder and for our imaginations. And so when I meet people who do that, or people who just have a love for the craft, I immediately feel at home. And this whole place is just filled with people who either do this or aspire to do this, or just love the act of animation, and it's very special. So I very much feel at home here.
With Wildwood, you brought to Annecy this year with LAIKA the first glimpses of into a handmade world. Can you tell us more about how you thought about this exhibit in the Cité for the opening of this amazing animation place?
Well, it's been a thrill for us to partner with the team here at Annecy to bring that aspect of Wildwood out to the public. You work on these things in this weird kind of insular little bubble for so long, and we've been working on Wildwood in some form or another for 16 years. And so to finally be here now, to be able to start to share what we've been working on with an audience, it's a thrill. And then because, stop motion is different from hand-drawn animation or CG in the sense that you are physically making these things. All these things are kind of manipulated by an artist's hand. They're built by an artist's hands. And so we create these objects that now people can experience on their own through this exhibition. And it's amazing. You can see, the puppets, you can see some of the sets, you can see the props, and just all the extraordinary craftsmanship and artistry that the team brings to bear to make a film like this happen. And it just scratches the surface. I think the exhibit is beautiful, and I actually was quite moved walking through it just the other day. But it really is just a tiniest little piece of what it took to make this movie.
Like the top of the iceberg?
The tip of the iceberg, yeah, exactly.
We're talking about puppets. Would you say that when you work with puppets, you are negotiating with them?
I mean, I've often described stop-motion puppets as little vampires, because they essentially suck the life out of the people who animate them. These things are inert objects. The only life that they have is because of the life that the person who is manipulating them gives them. And so it is a minor miracle, I think, every single stop-motion shot, because when you can give the illusion of life and agency and emotion to something that's just an assemblage of steel and silicon and cloth, it's extraordinary. It feels like a magic act to me. And so, the puppets oftentimes don't do exactly what you want them to do. There are inherent limitations in the medium, and because they're so small, there's only so much nuance you can get out of them with these ridiculous, banana hands. But at LAIKA, we never try to let the inherent limitations of the medium get in the way of the story that we're trying to tell or the performance that we're trying to give. And so that's why when I see something like Wildwood, which really is, as far as I'm concerned, it's the pinnacle of what can be done in stop motion in terms of the performance, the animation. The team has just done extraordinary work. It's so well observed, it's so nuanced, so subtle. These characters are fully alive, and to me, it's absolutely miraculous to see these characters spring to life in a way that you connect with them emotionally, because they're just these little dolls, basically.
Do you think they are active when you're not there?
I mean, they're certainly active in my imagination. You put so much of yourself into that. You're constantly thinking about these characters. I'm thinking about Prue. I'm thinking about Curtis and Alexander all the time, and kind of like how they are in the movie, where their lives go before and after the film. That would be something of a horror story if they were actually alive in the studio when we weren't there, but they certainly live in our imaginations, no question.
Are they already whispering to you, prepare the sequel?
Well, we've never done a sequel at Laika, and that's by design. You know, we do believe in telling original stories. We don't like repeating ourselves. I think one of the unique things about this particular project, though, is that, you know, it's an adaptation of literature. It's a book series written by Colin Malloy and Carson Ellis. And so there, you know, in literature, these character stories go on for multiple books beyond this one. It's taken us 16 years to make this movie, so I can hardly imagine what a sequel might look like. But certainly I know where their stories go in my mind.
You're talking about time, 16 years. It appears like nonsense in tempo, in a life where we're always gazing and going faster. Mm-hmm. Would you say that patience is a form of art today?
I think so. It's you know, certainly in the form of filmmaking that I've devoted my life to, you know, patience is a critical part of it. Focus is probably a more important part of it. Is just being able to kind of intensely focus on something for prolonged periods of time. It is, when I think about how long it's taken us to make this movie, it is kind of shocking on some level. I mean, you know, a kid who was born when we started working on this movie can drive me to the premiere, you know, in a couple of months. So it's just, it's very kind of sobering and humbling, just like how long it's been. Wildwood has been a part of my life for the majority of my career. And so it's weird now to finally be at the end of that process and being able to share it with the world and kind of send it out. It's bittersweet on some level, just because I've been living with it, and at some point I'm going to have to let it go, and I'm not quite ready yet. We still got a little ways to go before we're done with it, but it's been a kind of a joyous and maddening and beautiful experience.
Is it like a child leaving home and going for his own life?
You know, in a sense that you hope that if you've done your job right, that you know, you've kind of given this thing the wings that it needs to fly, and then you set it free, and that's what that's what we're about to do with this thing. This thing will have a life of its own after it leaves our doors, and I'm just excited for the world to experience it.
So you've spent 16 years and more with other projects, bringing still objects to life. What is one thing that animation has brought to life inside you?
It's hard for me to kind of extricate those things. It's like the animator in me, the artist in me, they're kind of entwined in who I am. So to kind of be able to separate it, I kind of can't. It has been my life's work working in animation. I've done it now for nearly 30 years. And it's kind of fundamentally who I am, how I see the world. It's just, you know, I think animation's a gift. I loved animation, you know, when I was a kid, before I was an animator, and I love it now. I think it is just such an extraordinary way to tell a story. And I think that if you do it properly, it's something that can endure, something that can live on. And the fact that, you know, we recently had I think like a 15th anniversary re-release of Coraline, and it still resonates so beautifully with audiences, that kind of shows that, you know, what film can mean for people. And for me, it's, you know, as a kid, I was a huge, voracious consumer of stories, of films, and those things that really live with me, that stuck to my ribs, were those things that made me feel something kind of deeply emotionally. And that's the kind of stuff that we try to do. So it's like, you know, the animator in me, the kind of the animation process that lives inside of me, it's a function of kind of trying to distill to the essence what something is, what something means, and try to bring that to life. That's how I've approached everything that I've done in my work, and actually in some ways in my life.
Without giving any spoilers, do you already know what you're going to work on next that will bring you back to Annecy?
Well, look, I don't know that I need to focus on something I'm working on to come back to Annecy. I'd happily come back to Annecy anytime. This is my first time. It will not be my last time. At Laika, you know, we have a number of different really, really cool projects that we've been developing. That's some, you know, things that are so different from anything that we've ever done before. It's one of the things I love about animation. It's world building. You start with absolutely nothing, a complete blank slate, and then every single thing that's in that movie is an artistic choice. And I think that that's one of the things that's so special about this art form, in that, you know, we live in this modern era that is just with these massive, incredible, miraculous advances in technology where you can generate, you know, entire worlds with the click of a mouse, or you can, you know, bring things to life, make visual images, you know, with just nothing but a text prompt. And so the notion that everything in an animated movie is a choice, it's an artistic choice, a creative choice. To me, that just sort of embeds these things with humanity, and it's what I love about animation. What's so enduring about animation is that you're essentially seeing the hands of the artist at work.
Some kind of miracle, actually.
It is, yeah. Look, it's a miracle. On some level, it's a miracle any movie ever gets made. They're so hard to make. So to actually be able to be part of making something that means something to you that you're really, really proud of, it's such a gift, and I feel very, very fortunate.